What's going on, guys? It's me, Zachary Steele, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. In this one, I'm going to go through each of the games we've got this week on Sunday and Monday, and just sort of go through which players think you should be starting and which players you think you should be sitting. Um, Obviously, there'll be some of the obvious ones, and I won't spend much time on any of those. I mean, top 10 running backs, receivers, I won't really tell you to start because you'll know. So basically, I'll mention any fantasy relevant player that I don't think you should be starting this week, and then if you guys have any questions after that, any start sit decisions you're trying to make before the games tomorrow morning, just feel free to comment on the video. I'll get back to you. Do my best to get back to you before the games start. Really enjoy doing this. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the season. It's quite a jump from where we're at right now, but I think we can do it. Anyway, with all that, let's get started. So the first game we've got is the Raiders versus the Steelers. I think that with Josh Jacobs out, you should be starting Kenyon Drake. I do expect him to get enough volume in the passing game to be relevant. Obviously, you're starting Darren Waller and Najee Harris. I'm not thinking you can get away with starting Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool as well. I'm not looking to start either of the quarterbacks in this game. Despite how Brian Edwards looked at the end of the game last week, I'd like to wait and see one more week with him, especially against a tough defense in Pittsburgh. I'm not starting Henry Ruggs till I see more out of him. And Juju, I think it's one of the three receivers. The Steelers is going to have a tough time this week, so I'd avoid him this week. 49ers versus Eagles. I think you can happily start Jalen Hurts. You're obviously going to start Miles Sanders. I think you can do okay starting Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. On the 49ers side of the ball, I think you should start Elijah Mitchell, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. With that said, I do think you should be benching Jalen Reagor, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Sermon, and Brandon Ayuk. Reagor is okay, but I would like to wait and see more production out of him before I throw him in against a tough 49ers defense. Jimmy Garoppolo might do fine, but I think he's at risk of getting siphoned by Trey Lance coming in like we saw last week. Trey Sermon obviously want to wait a week to see, and Brandon Ayuk, you don't want to play him again after what he did last week. Texans at Browns. This one's pretty easy. You're starting Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Jarvis Landry, Brandon Cooks, and you're pretty much sitting everybody else. If you're really desperate, I suppose you could play one of the tight ends in this game, but I don't expect any of them to be top 12. The Browns were using 3 tight ends pretty frequently last week, and Hooper, Harrison Bryant, and David Njoku. Texans, I don't really expect anyone to be able to produce consistently outside of Brandon Cooks, so I'd look to avoid every Texan not named Brandon Cooks. As for Broncos versus Jaguars, I actually think there's going to be quite a few fantasy relevant players in this game. So I think you can start a lot of Broncos in this game. You're going to be able to start Teddy Bridgewater, Melvin Gordon, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Noah Fant. Then on the Jacksonville side of the ball, I'd pretty much only feel comfortable starting DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault. DJ Chark led the team with 12 targets last week. He did capitalize for the touchdown. He wasn't very efficient on his targets, only catching 3 passes, but I think he'll have enough workload and enough volume to be relevant in the game that the Jaguars will be losing. I would look to sit Trevor Lawrence against what's a pretty tough defense for the Broncos. I'd also like to sit James Robinson until I see more consistent usage out of him. Carlos Hyde does have me scared about him a little bit. Javonte Williams, kind of the same thing. He did get more workload in week 1 than I expected him to, but I would still like to wait and see him really take over that role before I feel comfortable playing him. Marvin Jones, like you could start if you need to, but he didn't really do much last week until garbage time. He had this touchdown with like 4 seconds left in the game, and if you take that out, he really wasn't much. Then KJ Hamler's I think going to be the odd man out in the Denver offense, the receiving game. He's always a threat to catch a deep pass, and he could have a big play that makes me wrong here, but I would not feel comfortable with him in my lineup this week. So for Saints at Panthers, this one's pretty easy. You're going to start Alvin Kamara, and you're going to start Christian McCaffrey. That is a no-brainers. Then as far as the receivers go in this game, I think you can do okay starting DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. I'm going to avoid starting Marshall this week just until I see more out of him. I was encouraged by the 6 targets he got in week 1. I don't think you can really trust any of the Saints wide receivers this week, and I would like to avoid Jameis Winston because I do believe the Saints will be winning this game. I think the Saints are going to run the ball quite a bit, and I don't think you're going to see very many pass attempts than you did last week with Jameis, and he's going to have a hard time producing 5 touchdowns or even 2 on 20 attempts, so I'd like to avoid him in my lineup until I see it more often. So for Rams versus Colts, obviously you want to start Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. I'm also comfortable starting Darrell Henderson with the workload he got last week. I would expect to see a little bit more Sony Michel this week, but I'm still comfortable starting Darrell Henderson with all the workload he had. Tyler Higbee was on the field a ton. He did do well last week. I'm happy starting him as a tight end. And on the Colts, I'm really only comfortable starting Jonathan Taylor and then Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines, I'm really only looking at in the flex position or as an RB3 if you're in a deeper league, but I think he's startable. I'd avoid starting Carson Wentz. I would also avoid starting Van Jefferson. And I'm just not comfortable starting any of the Colts wide receivers yet until we see something out of them. If in the event that Pittman and Campbell both miss the game, because I know they've had some injury concerns and they're questionable, I would be okay with Zach Pascal in the flex, but just be prepared for him to let you down. It's really hard to predict Zach Pascal games, and I would like to avoid them until I see a string of good performances out of him. So for Bills versus Dolphins, obviously you're going to start Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, but I also think you can comfortably start Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley had 13 targets last week. I think he's going to be fine, especially in PPR formats. And then you're going to start Myles Gaskin. He's going to get enough volume. He'll catch enough passes that it's going to be hard for him to have a bad game. And I think you can start Jalen Waddle this game. We're going to have to wait another week to see Will Fuller. And Jalen Waddle looked really good, and he was used quite a bit last week. And he capitalized. He played well. And I think Jalen Waddle is probably the most talented receiver on this roster. And I think that there's always a chance he catches a deep bomb, but I think he's going to be involved enough that you can pretty much count on him to have a relatively safe floor. And I am comfortable starting Jalen Waddle this week. I'm going to sit Tua, another tough defense for the Dolphins to go up against. I'll also sit Devin Singletary. I suppose if Zach Moss is inactive tomorrow, you could start Singletary as a flex, but I don't think there's much upside there, and I would just rather avoid him. I'd like to avoid Emmanuel Sanders. The same would go for Gabriel Davis, even though he's not here on this list, just because I don't think it's neither one of them is a clear enough role. Cole Beasley is the clear 2 right now. Diggs is the obvious 1, and what should be a pretty low scoring game. I'm not really comfortable with expecting 3 receivers in Buffalo to perform. Obviously, you're going to bench Mike Gesicki this week after we did last week. And I don't think you can really comfortably start Devontae Parker. It looked okay last week, but it's a tough matchup, and I just think that it's going to be hard for him to count on him this week. He could be fine, but I would rather not have to start him this week. Patriots versus Jets. This should be a pretty gross game. I'm comfortable starting Damian Harris, even though he's going to probably have a bit less of a workload after the fumble last week. They've mentioned he might get his workload reduced, but he's the clear best back in New England, and he's performed well, and I'm comfortable starting him. I think Jacoby Myers is going to have a good week this week. He was the leading receiver last week in terms of targets. I think he had 9 in week 1, and I expect him to do well this week. I think he's got a really safe floor in PPR formats. I think it's a good shot he scores this week. Excuse me. And then I think for the Jets, you can comfortably start Corey Davis. I would lower your expectations this week. I don't think he'll have as good of a chance of scoring this week as he did last week, but he's the clear number 1 in that offense, and he'll get enough volume to be safe. I'm going to sit Nelson Aguilar this week. I just don't like the odds of him scoring a touchdown. I think that's the only way he's relevant. And then I'm going to bench the other Jets receivers and Elijah Moore. I also would bench any of the Jets running backs, even though I don't mention that here. So for Bengals versus Bears, obviously you're starting Joe Mixon with the volume he's getting and with where you drafted him. I think you comfortably start T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Bears let Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson, really the whole passing attack for the Rams, do really well last week. I don't think that's necessarily going to stop this week. Bears secondary is certainly vulnerable. I think T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to have good weeks. And then obviously you're starting David Montgomery. He looked awesome last week, and the Bengals are on a defense that scares you. And you got to start Allen Robinson. He's going to have a great week this week. Don't worry about what he did week 1. The volume's there. The usage is there. Talent's there. He's going to have a great week. I'm going to sit Joe Mixon this week just because or Joe Burrow this week, just because I don't necessarily think that he's going to be, you basically need him to get 2 or 3 touchdowns to be fantasy viable, and I just don't expect him to be a top 12 quarterback. It's pretty much what I mean when I say you should sit him. I think he'll be fine. He'll be in that 15 to 20 range. He'll get you 20 points, but I'd prefer to sit him if you got a better option. I think I'd rather sit Tyler Boyd after his low performance last week. I'd like to see him be more involved in the offense before I start him. And then I think you can sit Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. I was really encouraged by Darnell Mooney playing every snap last week. I think he had 7 targets. I like Darnell Mooney long-term, but I'm not going to trust him this week. And then Cole Kmet's another guy. I like him long-term, but again, I don't want to play him this week. So Falcons versus the Buccaneers. This should be a pretty high-scoring affair. And I think there's going to be a lot of fantasy relevant options in this game. You can start Calvin Ridley, obviously. I think Mike Davis is going to get enough catches. I won't be shocked if he leaves this game with 5 or so receptions. So I think his floor is going to be high enough that you can start him as an RB2 or flex. Obviously, you're starting Kyle Pitts, and then you're pretty much starting every Buccaneer. You're starting Brady, Evans, Godwin, and Brown, and Gronk. However, I'd rather sit Matt Ryan. I want to see him perform better than he did last week, and he doesn't offer enough on the ground for him to have a safe floor, so I'll avoid him. There's too much ambiguity in the Buccaneers backfield for me to trust any of their running backs this week. And then I'll sit Russell Gage. I liked him as a sleeper coming into the season. I don't think that's necessarily impossible that it'll work out, but he had 2 targets last week, 0 fantasy points. You need to wait and see before you play him. So Vikings versus the Cardinals. This should be another really high scoring game. Obviously, you're starting Dalvin Cook, Jefferson, Thielen, Kyler Murray, and Hopkins. I think you can do well starting Chase Edmonds this week. And I think that Christian Kirk's actually a start this week. He's shown that he's really a talented receiver in the slot normally. He's had a lot more of his success there. And since AJ Green's now a Cardinal, he's getting to work out of the slot a lot more than he did on the outside. He had 2 touchdowns last week. I'm not going to say he'll score 2 touchdowns this week, but I think there's enough volume. He'll have another good week. I'm going to sit Kirk Cousins this week. I'll also sit Rondale Moore and AJ Green, the other Cardinals pass catchers. I just think it's going to be hard for 3 of them to be relevant. I would start Rondale Moore over AJ Green just I think they're going to manufacture touches for Moore, and he'll have at least somewhat of a floor. And I'm also going to sit James Conner. You could play James Conner. He had 16 carries last week for 53 yards, but the problem is he's not going to be very involved in the passing game. So basically, you're going to be disappointed if he doesn't fall in the end zone. And although this is a week where I think he might, I would just feel more comfortable with him on my bench until I see something. So Titans at Seahawks. This should be another really high scoring affair. I'm really comfortable starting pretty much all of the main guys. So you're going to start Tannehill, Henry, Brown, Julio. Julio, I'm a little uncomfortable doing, but you have to start him with the draft capital you spent on him and just hope he does better than week 1. Obviously, you're starting Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. And then I think you probably just want to avoid all the tight ends in this game. I was really encouraged by Gerald Everett and Will Dissly in week 1, but the problem is they both sort of eat into each other, and you're basically going to need a touchdown if out of one of them for them to be relevant. I've got a league where I have Gerald Everett as my only tight end. I'm starting him because I have to, but if there's better options, like go pick up a Jared Cook on waivers or something, I'd rather start him. So then Cowboys versus Chargers. Obviously, you're going to start Dak, Zeke, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb. Not Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper. Ignore that. You're going to start Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. Mike Williams, someone who actually got a lot of volume in week 1, and as long as he's healthy, I think you're going to be comfortable starting him. I would be worried, obviously, with all of his injury history, that he doesn't make it through a whole season. But as long as he's healthy, I'm comfortable starting him. And then I'm going to bench Cedric Wilson and the Dallas tight ends. For sort of similar to Seattle, Dallas has 2 tight ends they use a lot, and I'm not comfortable with either one of them because they're going to eat into each other. And I say I'm going to sit Jared Cook here because I don't necessarily project him to be a top 12 tight end this week, but I do think he's going to get enough volume that he's startable over some of the other lower end guys. Chiefs versus Ravens. This one's pretty obvious. You can start Mahomes, Clyde, Tyreek, Travis Kelce. You're going to start Lamar and Mark Andrews. And I think you can start Tyson Williams this week. I would not expect a great workload out of him. Sounds like they're going to do more of a timeshare than they did last week, but he's still startable with how fickle the running back position is. And then I'm going to wait another week or 2 to see out of Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins. There's just not enough volume to go around the passing attack for the Ravens for me to trust any of those until I see some more consistency. Then lastly, for Lions versus Packers, on the Lions side of the ball, I think you can really only comfortably start DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, and TJ Hawkinson. DeAndre Swift misses the game on Monday due to an injury. Jamal Williams instantly becomes an RB1 this week. Aaron Rodgers start, even though after last week he was horrible. Aaron Jones, same thing. Devontae Adams, same thing. Robert Tonyan, same thing. And then I actually think Marquez Valdes-Scantling is startable this week. He got 7 targets last week. He was clearly the number 2 receiver in terms of usage in week 1. I won't be shocked if he catches a 50-yard touchdown this week. I'm pretty comfortable starting MVS in my flex this week. And I'm going to bench Jared Goff, even though there's upside there, which is the amount of volume I'd expect. I'll bench all the Lions wide receivers, and I'll bench Randall Cobb this week. So that'll be it. Thank you guys for watching this video. Try to be quick about it. If you like this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, click the little notification bell so you get notifications when I put more videos out. And if you want to connect with me on Twitter, just follow me at RealSteelFFB. I'll link it in the description. Feel free to message me with any start-sit questions or any fantasy questions you have in general, or if you just want to talk. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch these videos. It means a lot to me. It's really cool that anybody takes the time to listen to what I have to say. So thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day. And good luck tomorrow.